So without further ado, I'm going to hand on to Antoaneta from Bulgaria. And I put her bio in the chat. She will be speaking specifically about the pandemic and the digital space. We know that the number of children online is increasing by 5 times because of the pandemic. So she'll be presenting on the pandemic situation and the ethics around the study in Bulgaria. Over to you, Antoaneta, and I will put your bio in the chat.
Thank you, Sabine. You hear me, yeah?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. So I will shift a little bit your attention to the ethics of this research and how we in Bulgaria try to handle with the pandemic, with the research, and to protect our children and create some non-violent research environment. It was the 15th of March, 2020, and our research team prepared for the first focus groups with the girls from one of the prestigious high schools in Sofia that had to happen on the next day. And we were very enthusiastic to do this research. We were well prepared. We were thinking how to attract children and really to spend some interesting time with them. And then an order appeared from the Ministry of Health, and through this order, an anti-epidemic measure was introduced in the territory of the country. And according to the decision taken by the Ministry of Education, all schools had to switch to the distant learning in an electronic environment. I immediately called the school psychologist who facilitated the work with the children there in this school, and she said nothing could be done. We have to cancel this meeting. I talked with the girls. They want to participate, but their parents don't allow them to go out of home and to the school. And the school itself is closed, so we couldn't find a place for this activity. So we have to wait for better times. And from this moment started our struggle to provide good quality research in a very turbulent and unpredictable environment. We decided to wait for better times, and we kept this hope through spring and through summertime. In the first moment of the pandemic, we hoped that things would happen, will improve soon, and we will go back to the children in the school. Over time, it became clear that a return to classroom learning would not happen soon. And as you know, the situation with the pandemic got even more complicated, especially in Bulgaria. In the beginning of the new school year, the international research team has met in order to reconsider the methodology and to adapt this methodology to the online setting. After that, we renewed our efforts to connect to the school, to connect to the Ministry of Education. We wrote a letter to the ministry asking for access to the school and work with the children in a digital space. So we approached the school, and I called again the school psychologist from the capital city school in order to continue our work where we stopped. However, my enthusiasm was scaled again. She was very nervous when speaking with me, telling me that at the moment the situation at school is very difficult. Many of the teachers were sick, and even she has to replace them in the class, teaching some courses different. The parents are nervous, she said, and children are tired from the lockdown, from this distant learning, and the anti-epidemic measures are changing constantly. And in some weeks, children go to schools, in the others, they stop going there. So it was a total mess, she said. And shortly, school withdrew from our research. And facing these difficulties, our research team realized that we need to meet together and try to figure out what is going on and how to structure our work and proceed for the future. What we realized as a result of our discussion was, first, the process created a lot of stress and feelings of loss in our team. We lost one of the schools. Secondly, the reality in which we have to explore the issue of violence against children in violent environment actually met the more traumatic environment that we faced in this time. On the third place, the children are seriously affected. We realize that both physically and emotionally, children are affected by the pandemics and this distant learning. I think that the pandemic posed three major challenges to the children. The first one is related to the limits that the pandemic puts to children's natural needs to connect with the world beyond their family, communicating in groups of peers, giving and receiving things from each other, competing, making friends, falling in love, and being disappointed, all these experiences that created us as people. And unfortunately, the pandemic limited many of these possibilities for them. The second challenge for the children was that they have to deal with incredible stress provoked by the hidden threat of the virus, the compliance with the additional restrictive measures and rules, and the responsibilities that children have to take to care and to protect elderly from infection. And we realized also that on the third place for children was this pressure to quickly adapt to different forms of learning in an unpredictable way, to learn in new conditions with old or unsuitable for the digital environment pedagogical methods. Especially in our country, but I'm sure in the others too, the pedagogical staff, the teachers, had to learn how to change their lessons and how to teach in a digital space, to develop some skills in this, and it took time. If we have to summarize the situation of the children, what we could see is restrictions, threat and fear of survival, pressure to adapt to unpredictable and constantly changing conditions. What it describes for us is a situation of violence itself. And we had to make research on violence at school in such extremely violent environment. As a result of such thinking, our team introduced one general principle in the study: to take specific care for the children in the study. The aim was to create good balance between teams' effort to conduct high-quality research on the violence against children in the school, when in the same time not to be itself a source of violence for them. So we spoke to each other, and with the school psychologist and some of the teachers there, and we developed online research ethical guide. And there are three major topics that we think are important to face. And this was accessibility of children to the study, welfare of the children during the research, and the issue of confidentiality and the digital communication. And I will shortly present you our ideas on that we developed in these issues. And the first one is accessibility of the children to the study. The pandemic has increased social disparities in society, and this has become particularly evident among children at school. The poorest children did not have access to electronic devices, and in the best, they had some smartphones to learn all the day. They did not have their own space at home sometimes to study peacefully and to be prepared well for the school. Therefore, for us, it became of first importance to provide all necessary conditions for the poorest and most vulnerable children to participate in this study if they want and if they chose, and their voices to be heard there. All necessary technical requirements, good internet, phone or computer, basic skills to operate in internet, were ensured with the support of some parents and teachers in order that all children could participate fully and in comfort. The school psychologist room were prepared and were available for some of the children to go there and really to have some confident space to participate in focus groups on interviews. And here I will present some of our measures related to the welfare of the children during the research. Many times during the study, we heard from the children that they feel tired and they couldn't concentrate for a long time. So, as in this study, the focus groups with children were conducted after the classes. The sessions were shortened and with many breaks. For instance, 20 minutes work and then 10 minutes break. And children were informed that at any time they could say individually or as a group that they need some rest, that they need some break. And also field researchers were instructed to be very flexible in their work with the children during these focus groups, and to correspond to the specific needs and the difficulties that children experience during the sessions in order to really sustain their physical, mental health and well-being. And at the end is this confidentiality and digital communication issues that we faced. And you know, the digital space is always vulnerable to any unaccepted tape recording or shooting pictures. So at the beginning of each session, children were reminded, and each of them agrees of their obligation to care for the confidentiality of the discussions. And children also were asked to provide some secure environment in their spaces in order that no other people, even the members of their family, could be present or could intrude the session in their spaces. That's why we developed these rooms in the schools and offered them to some children to be able to speak freely and not having the feeling of being controlled. And finally, we introduced to the children some basic rules of online communication that could make the experience during the meetings comfortable for them, and space to be created for all children to express their opinions. So there are some very basic rules, like all microphones to be switched off when the child is not speaking. If someone wants to say something, how to raise hand or write in the chat. If someone wants to leave the session, to inform researcher and participants by phone or by writing in the chat. As a conclusion, I would say that the fact that children came and participated in the meetings and they spoke very openly with us, and we collected very rich and very valuable data. For me, it's an evidence that perhaps we were able to provide some good environment for them to speak about such difficult issue in a situation, in a surrounding environment full of stress and uncertainty. For our team, it was a really big challenge to pass through this experience, but it was also a source of learning. And in the end, I want to give our team special thanks to the children that participated in the study. And also to the adults, some parents and the teachers that supported us. And really big thanks to the school psychologists of the two schools in the small town and the village, with which support we will not succeed in this adventure. So thank you for this.
Thank you very much for this really interesting presentation where we're seeing the impact of COVID. I really